I'll call the Common Council meeting regular session for Wednesday, April 7th, 2021 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Rallo.
I'm here.
Volin.
Here.
Rosenbarger.
Here.
Scambaluri.
Here.
Sims.
Here.
Flaherty.
Here.
Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Sandberg.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, fellow colleagues. Welcome all and welcome to members of the public. We'll move to the agenda summation for this evening. We will have approval of minutes. Then we'll move down to reports. So we'll have council member reports, the mayor and city offices, if any, council committees, and comments from the public. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone that members of the public may speak on matters of community concern not listed on the agenda at one of the two public comment opportunities. Citizens may speak at one of these periods, but not both. Speakers are allowed 5 minutes, but this time allotted may be reduced by the presiding officer if numerous people wish to speak. Okay, then we'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Then we have legislation for first reading. That is ordinance 21-27. This is an ordinance correcting Scrivener's errors in ordinance 21-09, which amended Title IX of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Water. I will mention the note. This ordinance is being introduced this evening with the possibility that it will be considered for adoption later this same evening. Then we'll move on to legislation for second readings and resolutions. Resolution 2107, a resolution regarding Dimension Mill Incorporated. The next one is ordinance 21-27, an ordinance correcting Scrivener's errors in ordinance 21-09, which amended Title IX of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Water. Now we do have a note on that ordinance 21-27. When we get to it, a unanimous consent is necessary for the council to consider adoption of this ordinance at the same meeting in which it is introduced, and at least 2/3 vote of those present is required for its passage. I think we'll mention that again when we get to that piece of legislation. Moving on, ordinance 21-11 to amend Title II of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Administration and Personnel, regarding updating and harmonizing portions of the Title II of the Municipal Code. Moving on, we'll move to ordinance 21-12 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic, regarding restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. Next ordinance is ordinance 21-13 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic, regarding amending chapters 12.32.080, Schedule M, no parking zones, to remove 3 no parking zones and add 10 no parking zones, and to amend chapter 15.32.100, Schedule 0, loading zones, to add 2 loading zones. And finally, for ordinances, we have ordinance 21-07 to amend the City of Bloomington zoning maps by amending the district ordinance and preliminary plan for parcel E of the Thompson PUD regarding 300 West Hillside Drive, Tom Brennan petitioner. We will then have additional public comment where a maximum of 25 minutes is set aside for this section. Then we'll have matters of council schedule, and then we will move to adjourn. Do we have any minutes for approval this evening? Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that the minutes from the meeting on February 25th, 2021 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved for approval. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that these are corrected minutes that we're approving here.
Oh, thank you. I see that. Having seen that, are there any additions or corrections? No, thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And that passes 9-0. Now we'll move down to reports. Do any of the council members have a report this evening? We'll start as I see them on my screen, with the exception of Councilmember Sandberg. So we'll start up to the right. Councilmember Volin.
No report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
No report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scambolery.
Yes, thank you. I have several people I just want to acknowledge and thank tonight. Lower Cascades Park has a number of things going on, including some tree removal and some road closure projects. And a lot of residents have had questions about that. So I want to acknowledge Paula McDevitt and Mallory Rickbile, who attended my constituent meeting. Thank you for doing that. Tim Street, Operations and Development Division for Parks and Rec, and Aaron Hatch, our urban forester, have just been phenomenal. So thank you for that. Also, the Crescent Bend Neighborhood Association wanted me to acknowledge Angela Van Roy in Housing and Neighborhood Development. She was our neighborhood program services manager and services program manager, and was very helpful with a neighborhood cleanup. So thank you for that, Angela. I also want to acknowledge some very good work being done by Alex Crowley, Director of Economic Sustainable Development, and his team. I know that there is a good deal going on with the mill. I think in a couple weeks, we're going to hear an update on the Rapid Recovery Loan Fund. And I believe we have some things actually going on the core building right now. We actually just covered that a couple weeks ago, but Mr. Crowley, perhaps if you like, you could say a word about that when you talk about a resolution later on too. So I would offer that. But again, just my sincere thanks to all those individuals for being so supportive of and responsive to residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes. First, I wanted to just thank the members of the Plan Commission and the Planning and Transportation Department staff who have done a very hard job and a lot of hours and heavy lifting with the UDO amendments. And of course, the staff's job and the Plan Commission representative, Councilmember Sandberg's job is not done as it now moves to the City Council, and we'll be scheduling that in the coming weeks, I think. But I did want to just give a shout out to the Plan Commissioners and the staff on all the time they've put into this. And I want to also let everybody know that my monthly constituent meeting is this coming Saturday at 11 a.m. and it will be via Zoom. And the Zoom link can be found on my page on the City Council website. So if you go to bloomington.in.gov/council, and then if you click on my name, you'll see the calendar with the link. So I welcome anyone, especially those who live in District 5, to join me on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, just briefly, that I also will be having my monthly constituent meeting on Monday, April 19th at 5:30 p.m. I generally hold those on the third Monday of the month, and this is our last regular session before that, so I wanted to make sure to mention it. A link for that can be found possibly on the council page. I think we update the calendar on the sidebar, but also on facebook.com/Flaherty for Bloomington. So I hope to see constituents there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Flaherty. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rallo.
No report. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you, President Sims.
I strongly object to the many characterizations made by Councilmember Volin in his speech on March 17 against those of us who opposed Ordinance 21-06 as having no regard for humanity or the well-being of our community. I strongly object to the 4 of us who voted no being blamed for a 9-hour meeting with the claim that it was entirely of our making. The meeting of March 3 included matters other than this last legislative item that sparked dissenting opinions and would not be easily settled. As it was the right of the 3 sponsors to bring 2106 forward, it is also the right of any of us on this council to oppose it on equally principled grounds. I did not perceive the proposed ordinance as sound public policy or as amendable. I voted no. While Councilmember Volin's remarks began as a call to civility, they turned into a patronizing lecture aimed at those of us who voted no. Representatives will hold differing opinions about the best ways forward, but our focus must always be on the issues, not on the persons supporting the legislation or those raising questions and reasonable objections. To possibly resolve this unfortunate conflict, I urge everyone to think about how we speak to each other in meetings. The public will be better served when we avoid inflammatory accusations and the airing of past grievances. These are the tools of incivility that erode the trust and the collegiality that is required to work through differences without impugning anyone's motives, without calling into question their morality, without bullying or dismissing their views by calling them names. I need to turn outward to focus on the important issues ahead. I want to get beyond the internal communication failures and the incivility that has brought us here. Moving forward, I hope everyone on this council and in the public can model respectful communication skills and statesmanship. Thank you very much for allowing me this time for a rebuttal.
Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. And I'll finish up this portion with a comment of my own. First of all, Councilmember Sandberg's rebuttal to a report by one of our colleagues, I believe 2 meetings ago, is her response to that. And that was in regard to discussion and debate on Ordinance 2106, being that legislation is over. We, as far as I'm concerned, and I do believe for the decorum of this council, are done discussing that issue. So thank everyone for their comments that they had in regard to civility or Robert's rules or whatever other issues that were brought up. I will add again, or to this, I just want to address, I was interviewed, and I think several of us were maybe, by our newspaper reporter from the HT. And I firmly rejected his characterization that this city council was battling lingering bitterness between 2 factions of city council. Now, the data that I provided him, and I would like to share that with this evening to dispute that characterization, is this calendar year, we've had 9 ordinances and 6 resolutions for a total of 15 pieces of legislation. Now, I will say that 80% of those were adopted, and which were 12, and 10 of those were unanimous decisions. 20% of those, or 3, failed. Now, the voting record on those 3 that failed was 0-9, or unanimous support for failure. One was 1-7-1. And what we spoke of before, 2106, failed with a 4-4 tie. And there wasn't enough to majority to carry that. So again, of those 15 pieces of legislation, all but 1 were, well, 10 were unanimous. 11 if you count the 9-0 on the failed, and then the other 2 were fully debated and voted properly. Again, I just want to refute to the public on why I respectfully reject that characterization of this council and of our relationships with each other at this time. And I would also like to repeat and reiterate from the day that I became council president, and we spoke of mutual respect and collaboration and collegiality. We also discussed of civility and, just being respectful of one another. So I will restate that again this evening. I hope, again, no one gets tired of it, because that will be the mantra that I will keep hammering throughout the rest of this year. So thank everyone for their comments. Now, we'll move down to reports. Do we have anyone from the mayor or any other city offices? Okay, I don't see Mr. Crowley.
President Sims, is this a good time to perhaps respond to Councilmember Scambolari's request for an update to the core building?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So this is, I'm Alex Crowley. I'm the Director of Economic and Sustainable Development for the city. And thank you, Councilmember Scambolari, for the opportunity to talk about this. A lot of work is going on with the core building, which is important in its own right, but also for the hospital site overall. Thank you also, Councilmember Scambolari, for accepting our invitation as the chair of the Sustainable Development Committee to participate in the vetting process for development proposals. So if you remember, when we talked last, we had to initiate the core project early in the event a developer wanted to pursue a 9% low-income housing tax credit deal, or a LIHTC deal, because the application for that is at the end of July. So what's happened so far is we released the RFI, which is a request for information, on March 1st of this year. We ran 2 physical tours of the building for developers and 1 virtual tour, which included a video. And those were on March 12th, 16th, and 26th. And we appreciate IU Health's partnership in that. And we formally responded to via 2 posted addenda to questions that we received from developers in advance of the deadline for proposals, which was 2 days ago on Monday, April 5th. So we've received 6 proposals as of the Monday's deadline. And what happens next is the selection committee that will be vetting the proposals will go through them. We'll create a short list, and then we will interview the lead candidates out of that process. And so, we're keeping an eye on the July 26th date as an important date for the low-income housing tax credit applications, if anyone decides to pursue one, and we're working towards that as quickly as we can. So remember that this project will take some time. It'll be challenging. IU Health will vacate the building in late 2021 or early 2022. There'll be demolition of the main hospital site. And then the RDC, the Redevelopment Commission, will only acquire ownership of the development site sometime in 2022. And we'll, of course, update you and the public along the way so everybody stays informed. And then finally, I'll just put this in context. Obviously, the core building project is very important. And it's one of a number of affordable housing projects the city is currently facilitating. You may not know that the Night Move site received a very competitive 9% low-income housing tax credit financing based on its applications. And we expect that to see some activity in 2021. We're developing the lots at Arlington 17th Street that will be shovel ready, made so by the developer up there. And I'm hoping to see single family and duplexes, including some home ownership. And then, as you know, this evening, Parcel E of the Thompson PUD has important and significant affordable housing element in it as well. So there's a lot going on and other projects in the pipeline, but I did want to update you this evening on where things stood with the core building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley, for that report. And thank you, Councilmember Scambolari, for bringing it to our attention this evening. This is probably not normal, but does any of my colleagues have any questions or comments on Mr. Crowley's report? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley, for that report. That was great to let us know how things are going. Can you estimate when the demolition, is there kind of a ballpark on when the demolition might start?
The demolition is expected to start in I think early 2022. So they're moving out of the hospital late 2021. I think it's November. Then there'll be some staging, and so we're expecting that to begin in early 2022.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions of Mr. Crowley. Thank you for presenting, Mr. Crowley. Now, do we have any reports from council committees this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to comments from the public. I would like to remind everyone that this section has been set aside for a maximum of 20 minutes. What I am requesting of the public, if you don't mind, would you please indicate your intent to speak by using the raised hand function in Zoom, or you could send a note to our host. And that is just so we can get a count to see if we want to alter the time allowed. So I'll give it just a second. I think I see two, Mr. Lucas.
That's correct. That's all I see at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I will say this, that during public comment, if there is more than one person on the same computer or phone, please let us know when the time comes so that we can be sure to acknowledge everyone. And I think I just saw a third hand, Mr. Lucas. So we can proceed and each person will have 5 minutes.
First up, I believe, is Jim Shelton, who should be ready to comment.
Good evening,
Mr.
Council.
Shelton.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you. Hi, good evening. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm speaking right now on behalf of the CASA's, a Court-Appointed Special Advocates Program. I want to make you and the public aware that April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. So the goal of this month is to raise awareness in the public, especially the public locally in this case, of the existence of child abuse as a problem. There will be a number of events throughout the month that will help facilitate increasing this awareness. What I want to highlight is that on April 16th, the Department of Child Services is going to have an event out in the parking lot outside their office on Curry Pike, right where the Department of Motor Vehicles is, where people can come, and they've invited CASA to participate. So you can go there and spend a few minutes. It'll be socially distanced, masked, outdoors, and very safe. And learn a little bit about what the Department of Child Services responsibilities are in dealing with child abuse. And then you can talk to some CASAs and find out what their role is. So I invite people to do that. It'd be a good way to learn more about what is going on in this area. And then to give local people an idea of this problem, it really is a local problem. Right now, their CASA has been serving in 2021. So, and this data is of March 1st. So in the first 2 months, we are serving 310 children who are in the court system because they've been abused or neglected. Now, this is not 310 new cases in just 2 months, but this is how many, some of these started. I've got a case that started in 2018, but in 2021, so far, we're serving 310 children. We have 133 CASA volunteers who are serving these children and doing a great job. But unfortunately, we've still got 31 children right now who are in the court system because their parents have abused or neglected them, who we do not have a volunteer to assign to be their CASA. To work on that, we've got a training coming up in June. The way this works is if you decide you want to help with this problem by volunteering to be a CASA, you would apply, and I will tell you how in a second. You'd be interviewed, and then you would undergo 30 hours of training to get you prepared to do this. You need no special background. You don't have to have worked with children before. I was a physicist for 40 years and dealt with, not with people so much, but they will train you on the things you need to know. So June 7th through June 30th, the training will be via Zoom. It'll be Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 8:30 via Zoom. And you'll learn things like, what are the roles and responsibilities of CASA? What are the child protection laws in the state of Indiana? You'll learn and get a template for the reports that you would be needing to write whenever there's going to be a hearing. And you would learn about the family dynamics of abuse and neglect, because there is a pattern to these things that repeat frequently. So you would be able to be trained, and then you would be sworn in by Judge Galvin and Judge Harvey as an officer of the court. And so when there are hearings, you have basically the same rights as an attorney to question people, to bring in evidence, to make motions. To learn about this opportunity, you can call 333-2272 or go to monroecountycasa.org. There's a volunteer link and then a frequently asked questions page there that will provide you a bunch of the data that you need. So I invite people to seriously consider this. We need people to step forward and volunteer. It can be very satisfying. As Judge Galvin says, yes, it's very hard, but it's also just very satisfying when a case is resolved. The parents have gotten their act together and have been reunited with their kids, or the kid, if the parents cannot, then the kids have been adopted into a forever home that will allow them to grow up without being impeded by what their parents have done. So please look into it, think about it, and thank you guys so much for the opportunity to bring the word to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Who do we have next, Mr. Lucas?
Next up is Alex Goodlad.
Hi, Alex Goodlad. You have about 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, so I want to respond to, I guess, Susan's rebuttal and I guess Sim's addendum or Jim's addendum to the rebuttal.
Mr. President, I'd ask that members of the public address council members by Councilmember Sandberg or Councilmember Sims. Thank you.
Oh, why is that?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr.
Sure.
Or Councilmember Flaherty.
In answer to Mr. Goodlad's question, the idea is a principle in Robert's rules that to maintain decorum and civility within legislative bodies themselves, as well as members of the public, to have a degree of formality and make sure that we are addressing ideas and arguments and not personalities and people.
Thank you, Councilmember Flaherty, and thank you, Councilmember Volan. Mr. Goodlad, you can proceed. I did stop the clock, so you have approximately 4 minutes and 20 seconds if you need it.
Okay, it was more like 4.5 minutes, but you know, I'll take what time I can get. So I think that so when it comes to, so you have some tenets of civility, Councilmember Sims. So you have collaboration, compassion, collegiality, and respect. And I feel like there needs to be an additional C word to that, which is consistency, because there's absolutely no consistency with how that's followed. I don't doubt for a second that, you know, at some point in some meeting, somebody was called by their first name and not by Councilmember X, and nothing was raised. You know, that's one example. And let's go back to this, you know, the March 3rd meeting. You know, one thing that Councilmember Sandberg said was that, you know, it's bad to question the motives. And last I recall, the discussion was completely shut down on Ordinance 2106. And that, you know, goes against collaboration and I would argue respect, because although Sandberg made the point that it's not our doing that the meeting went till 3 a.m. You could have made it till not 3 a.m. and, mob majority or mob tie or whatever you want to call it said no. So, that's a bit of a contradiction. And let's see. And there's another contradiction which I remember another reason that 2106 got rejected was because it wasn't vetted by the city or something like that. Well, I remember, about a week ago, there was an amendment, Councilmember Sandberg, that you put forward getting rid of zones R1 through R3. And I don't think that was vetted by the city either. That went down 8-1. So, and yet you pushed the amendment, wasn't vetted by the city. So I don't know. There's just, I'm not questioning the motives because I guess that's not allowed. But I think that there's no thought about how to achieve consistency in being civil, quote unquote. And I think that is a big problem because for one, if we're not going to be, if there isn't a sense of consistency achieved, there isn't really respect. And if the rules are upheld, for one group of people, so the rules of civility or whatever were upheld to a T for me and also a lot of those other people, including a lot of marginalized people, much more so than me. And then with other constituents, there are plenty of times with the UDO that level of respect as desired upon me wasn't achieved there. And like with the UDO back in September of 2019, where in response to all that ruckus that was raised, there was recess that was voted on. So my point is that if we're going to try and be civil, be consistent, or else it's going to be impossible. Like it's really, you're not following the rules. So what's really the point of me trying? And I'll end my time at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goodlatte. Who do we have next, Mr. Lucas?
Next up is Nathan Mutchler.
Good evening, Mr. Nathan Mutchler. You have about 5 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to, like Alex, speak briefly on the last several meetings in 2106. I won't rehash the issues beyond reminding us all that there will be scores more people without beds when the winter shelter closes very soon. I agree that civility and collegiality are important tools in communicating and reaching consensus, even if that consensus will be to disagree. But civility and collegiality must also include accountability and compassion. To be civil without compassion is to be cold and unfeeling to the point of empty ritual. To be collegial without being accountability is to be chummy and full of empty smiles and words. What I've seen and heard is that the 4 no votes, there may have been a desire to weaponize the civility and collegiality to avoid compassion and accountability. And to weaponize this very important goal of this body is to breed dysfunction and malaise. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mutchler. Do we see anyone else, Mr. Lucas?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, now we'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Do we have any appointments this evening? Councilmember Volan.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm pleased to nominate the following members to the inaugural class of the Community Advisory and Public Safety Commission. To seat 2, Matthew Diaz. Seat 3, Derek House. Seat 4, Nicole Johnson. Seat 5, Nejla Rootsong. Seat 6, Kamala Brown Sparks. Seat 7, Heather Lake. Seat 8, Alexander Mann. Seat 9, Renee Miller. Seat 10, Mateo Perez. And seat 11, John Wunrow. These are all seats C2 through C11.
Councilmember Volin, would you be willing to send those to me in writing?
I will be happy to.
Thank you.
I need a second.
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 Thank you. Just waiting on the other member of the Public Safety Committee. Thank you very, very much. Okay, it has been properly moved and second to accept these appointments to the CAPS Commission. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, just 1 second, please. Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes,
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
and Volin.
Yes, and I've just sent the names.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that motion to appoint passes 9-0. Do we have any other further nominations or appointments this evening? Councilmember Smith.
President Sims, I have some appointments to be nominated for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission. Ann Edwards, I nominate Ann Edwards for C1. I nominate Casey Green for C2. And I have other ones. Shall I go to the next commission after we vote on this one?
Was this a separate commission?
Yes, traffic and parking.
Yes, I think we take them one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Go
point
ahead.
of order.
Yes.
Just a correction, I believe it's Ann Edmonds.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
not
see.
Edwards.
I
Thank you,
second the
Mr. Rallo.
nominations.
Okay, thank you. It's been properly moved in second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Rosenbarger. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Councilmember Scambalori.
Yes.
Sorry, I went first last time.
Sorry about that. Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes,
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes,
and Rosenbarger.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. And that motion to appoint to the Bike and Ped Commission is 9-0. Councilmember Smith.
President Sims, I'd like to nominate to the Common Council to the Traffic Commission, David Hoff, C2, and Greg Alexander for C5.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second for these appointments to the Traffic Commission. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes,
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
yes,
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Scambalori.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that motion passes 9-0. Councilmember Smith.
President Sims and the Common Council, I'd like to nominate Adrian Evans Fernandez for reappointment to the Parking Commission And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact seat. Does anyone recall?
Second, I can look it up.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second to appoint to the Parking Commission. Will the clerk please call the roll?
We're waiting to find out which seat she's being reappointed to, actually.
Thank you.
And if you can't find it, I'll look for it as well.
Seat C2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Was that the
Okay,
only?
it's been, yes, that's it.
That's
It's been properly moved and second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Okay. Councilmember Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
and Sims.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that motion to appoint passes 9-0. Before we move further, I want to congratulate all of the appointees to the CAPS Commission, the Bike and Ped Commission, the Traffic Commission, and the Parking Commission. So congratulations to all of our citizens and volunteers. We really thank you for serving in this capacity. And I also want to thank my colleagues for the vetting and the voting and the selection, and then bringing it to this council for approval. So thank you all very, very much. Okay, I think we now have legislation for first reading. Councilmember Flaherty.
Mr. President, I move that ordinance 2127 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that ordinance 21-27 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please read?
I believe we have to vote on that, don't we?
On the motion to introduce.
That's correct. A roll call vote on the motion would be in order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do apologize. I thought first reading was different. I do apologize. So it's been properly moved and second to be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
and Flaherty.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 9-0. Will the clerk please read?
Yes, ordinance 2127, an ordinance correcting Scrivener's errors, and ordinance 2109, which amended Title IX of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Water. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance corrects two Scrivener's errors in ordinance 2109 affecting Bloomington Municipal Code section 908040.
Thank you very much. We do have some legislation for second readings tonight. Councilmember Flaherty.
President Sims, I move that resolution 2107 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that ordinance 21-07 be read by, or introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please read?
Resolution 2107, a resolution regarding Dimension Mill Incorporated. The synopsis is as follows. Resolution 2107 formally acknowledges Dimension Mill Incorporated's role in supporting the city's work and economic development through its charitable mission and investment funds, including the Flywheel Funds series, which will help protect the mill's nonprofit status as it generates revenue through its management of the fund. Through DMI's charitable investment funds and mission as a nonprofit, DMI is relieving some of the burdens of government as it relates to supporting job creation and retention, diversifying the local business base, and increasing access to capital in Bloomington.
Councilmember Flaherty.
I move that resolution 2107 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Who do we have here to present this evening? I thought I saw, Mr. Crowley. I'm sorry, I thought I saw Mr. East here. Will you please go ahead and present, Mr. Crowley?
Thank you, Council President Sims. I'm Alex Crowley, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development for the City of Bloomington. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to speak on behalf of Mayor Hamilton and city staff in support of Resolution 2107, a resolution regarding Dimension Mill Inc. and its Flywheel funds. Thank you also for scheduling us up front in a rather packed agenda. I will briefly summarize the reason for the resolution and why we support it. I'm joined this evening by Pat East, Executive Director of the Mill, and also by the Mill's Counsel, Ryan Wagner, who can help answer any questions you might have of them. But first, let me quickly introduce the Flywheel Fund to those of you who are not familiar with it. The Flywheel Fund is a Dimension Mill managed capital fund for early stage and high potential startups. The fund launched in August of 2020. The first cohort of 11 members planned to make 4 investments of $25,000 each for a total of $100,000 in a year. But by January 2021, the fund had exceeded expectation both in speed and in total investments, investing $120,000 across 5 companies in less than 6 months. The second cohort has quadrupled membership to 49 investors and grown the investment fund to $640,000, an increase of over 500%. Flywheel Fund will co-invest with Elevate Ventures, an Indiana-based nonprofit venture fund and development partner that focuses on Indiana-based early stage companies. Flywheel Fund aims to grow not only the pool of startup funding in the region, but also the pool of experienced investors. Many of Flywheel's members are first-time investors. The Mill educates them on how the investment process works, what to look for in a pitch, and what to expect in terms of return. The fund seeks early stage and high potential companies with an Indiana connection, which advantages Bloomington. And also, notably, Flywheel reserves a minimum of 30% of its funds for Black founding teams and awarded 20% to Black founders in its first cohort. So Resolution 2107 works to ensure the protection of the Mill's nonprofit status under the federal tax code by affirming that the Mill's administration of the capital fund is fully aligned with its nonprofit mission of supporting economic development, promoting entrepreneurship through job creation and retention, diversifying the local business base, and increasing access to capital in Bloomington. And to be clear, the Mill is not itself an investor in the fund, rather the Mill administers the fund. In acknowledging the city's responsibility to enhance our local economy, the Mill's essential role in furthering the city's economic development goals, and Flywheel Fund's place in the context of the Mill's mission, the Council will help ensure that the Mill's nonprofit status is not jeopardized by Flywheel Fund's generation of capital and the Mill's resulting generation of unrelated business income tax. In sum, on behalf of Mayor Hamilton, I strongly support this resolution 2107 and encourage you to vote to adopt it this evening. Since the Mill's opening in October 2018 and with council's steadfast support and guidance along the way, the mill has been doing great work to focus, develop, and enhance Bloomington's technology sector. The mill has attracted and grown its expert and talented staff, its membership, its programming, and now its ability to attract capital. We all hope the mill would become the tech sector catalyst it has become, but frankly, its success was not preordained. Under Pat East's masterful leadership and that of the mill team, the mill's success has exceeded our most optimistic projections, especially remarkable in the face of a crippling global pandemic. This great work is why Bloomington will receive TechPoint's Rising Tech City Miro Award on April 22nd, and why Bloomington is increasingly being recognized as a Midwest technology powerhouse. So thank you for your time and consideration. Pat, Ryan, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. And I may have misspoke at the beginning of this and called it an ordinance 21-07. This is in fact a resolution 21-07. So just wanted to make that clear. Do we have any questions from council members? I'm sorry, before we go there, did you care to address the council, Mr. East?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I actually did not need to address the council. I just turned on my video. Alex said everything perfectly, cleanly, and directly. So no, but thank you.
Thank you. And you will be available for questions. I'm sorry, I just reacted to the power of video. So going back to our council colleagues for questions, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I have a question just out of ignorance of how these things work. So this resolution will help ensure the mill's nonprofit status is not jeopardized by the Flywheel Fund's generation of capital and the mill's resulting generation of unrelated business income tax. I'm reading that from Mr. Crowley's memo. So how does the mill, so the mill incurs this unrelated business income tax, and how does that happen and why?
So I'll ask our attorney, Ryan Wagner, to fill in any gaps here. But from a kind of a layman's, my perspective, the way Flywheel Fund works is that any money that is returned to investors, they get 80% of that. Flywheel keeps 20%. That's a normal kind of 80-20 split in the venture capital world. The Flywheel Fund it helps support startups, but it is not 100% on mission with our 501c3 approved mission from the federal government. And so in order to receive that money and have it A, not be taxable to us, or B, more importantly, we not lose our 501c3 nonprofit status, we need this resolution to essentially defer upon us what am I trying to say? The ability for capital investing to be part of our mission, essentially. So if the city decrees it, what the federal government and IRS has said is that that will not impact your nonprofit status. I think Ryan might be able to clear that up a little bit more. Sure. if it's still clear as mud.
Sure, and I'm happy to just jump on that for a second. So at a high level, the unrelated business income tax is a tax that's imposed on charities when they generate revenue from an activity that's not closely aligned with their charitable mission. And so for most charities, if they're doing investment activities like the mill's doing here, and they're managing funds, those resulting fees wouldn't necessarily align with their charitable mission. So you can see how where a soup kitchen operating a Flywheel Fund wouldn't align with what their purposes are. And so the income from that fund for a soup kitchen would be taxable because it's unrelated to their charitable mission. So what we're doing here is just documenting the existing relationship between the city of Bloomington and the mill. And by doing that, we are affirming for the IRS that this activity of managing this fund is related to our charitable purpose of promoting economic development in Bloomington and the surrounding area. And so it just strengthens our ability to say that those are related revenue streams. They're related to our charitable purpose. And so we wouldn't pay tax on them where other charities might have to.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public for comments. Do we have anyone that you show? Mr. Lucas?
Yes, I do see one hand raised at the moment.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Before I call on Mr. Alexander, I'll just remind folks that if you would like to comment, you can use either the raise hand function or send in a message via chat to the meeting host, and we'll recognize you that way. And first up, I do see Greg Alexander, who should be able to unmute.
Great.
Mr. Greg Alexander, you have about 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Greg Alexander. I want to first say I don't have any opinion on how you should vote. And also, I'm not a lawyer. I just thought someone should acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is that the mill is not primarily involved in charitable activities. I believe it truly is a nonprofit, but it blatantly does not clear the 501c3 hurdle of charitable activity. So far as I know, its primary activity is investment and real estate management. I have no idea what you should do, but I just thought there should be public acknowledgement that even laudable business activities are not charity, especially when those activities include lobbying for public investment and parking. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do you show anyone else, Mr. Lucas?
I do not know.
Okay, we'll return to council for any further questions or final comments. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Well, I wonder if Mr. Wagner might follow up on the public comment that we heard about the DM.
Sure. I lost you for a second, but I think I knew what you were asking. So the determination of whether the mill is a charity was made by the federal government and the IRS. And so that's not something that is, I guess people can have opinions on the way the entity operates, but whether or not it meets the threshold of being a 501c3 organization, that's already been analyzed and determined by the Department of Treasury. And so our activities are clearly aligned with 501c3 principles. The organization has a 501c3 determination letter, and they file annual tax returns. And so I don't know much about what the basis for those comments were, but from a strictly a tax perspective, the mill is certainly in fact a 501c3 organization in good standing with the IRS.
Thank you.
That
I'm sorry.
maybe it's the term charity may be throwing people off, but a 501c3 is encompasses more than what we typically think of as charities. So
right, and oftentimes people will think of 501c3 as churches, soup kitchens, and homeless shelters, right? Because that's kind of what we think about charity at like the basic level. But the IRS has a much more expansive view, and furthering the burdens of state and local government, which is what we do here, is a well-established basis to be a charity under 501c3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments from council? No, seeing none. Mr. East, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, or Mr. Wagner, but recently I heard you speak on certain programs that were designed to help some marginalized populations. One that comes to mind, I don't remember exactly, was the 13% project or something like that. So can you take a moment to just expound on one of those, and maybe that will help the public?
Sure, of course, Mr. Sims. So So the 13% that you're referring to is the percent of African Americans in the United States. And after the Black Lives Matter protests last summer, the mill in conjunction, or myself in conjunction with the board, issued a statement about Black Lives Matter. There were two specific actions that we linked to that. One was to start a scholarship fund for Black founders and professionals so that the number of Black founders and professionals in the mill as members matched that of the United States. And we also, one of our actions was that when Flywheel Fund makes an investment, or excuse me, out of the first fund, when Flywheel Fund makes an investment, at least 13% of those funds need to go to a Black founding team. So we give, we made one of those investments last year, and so we met that 13% threshold. The mill gives away about $20,000 worth of membership scholarships annually to Black founders, Black professionals, and other underrepresented minorities. And so this is, some of that, I think what Ryan is talking about, some of that more quote unquote traditional type of charitable work is something that is still within the mill's purview, even though obviously we are focused on helping start businesses and helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses.
Thank you very much, Mr. East. Any other final comments from council members? Okay, seeing none, are we ready for the question? Will the clerk please call the roll on resolution 21-07?
Yes, Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that passes 9-0. Thank you this evening, Mr. Crowley, Mr. Wagner, and Mr. East for your presentation. I do believe we have, I'm sorry, was there another comment?
I just wanted to thank you for your time tonight, your consideration, and thank you to the council for your continued support of the mill. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I believe we still have more legislation for second reading tonight. Councilmember Flaherty.
I move that ordinance 2127 be introduced and read by title and synopsis only by the clerk.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that resolution 21-27 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rallo,
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. Can we hang on just for a second? And I do believe Mr. Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I need to remind that we need unanimous consent will be necessary for the council to consider this adoption.
That's correct. Yes.
That is correct. Okay. And then when it comes time to vote, then we'll need 2/3 of the vote that's required for its passage. So I just want to make that clear. Now, Clerk Bowden, will you please call the roll?
absolutely. Councilmember Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
My cat and I say yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Sandberg.
Yes.
Thank you. And that passes 9-0. It meets the unanimous consent threshold. I believe it's Councilmember Flaherty.
I believe we should read by title and synopsis, and then I would be ready to make a motion to adopt.
Thank you very, very much. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2127, an ordinance correcting Scrivener's errors, and Ordinance 2109, which amended Title IX of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Water. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance corrects two Scrivener's errors in Ordinance 2109 affecting Bloomington Municipal Code, Section 9.08.040.
Move that ordinance 2127 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. Then properly moved in second. I do believe we have City Representative, Director Vic Kelson here this evening. Would you care to present? You need to try unmuting one more time. Still not hearing you. And I will mention to my colleagues that we also have, we got you now, Utilities Attorney Chris Wheeler here to join us. Go ahead, Mr. Kelson. Thank you.
Actually, all I was trying to say is that I'm only here as a spectator. Mr. Lucas and Mr. Wheeler will handle this one. Sorry.
I'm happy to take the lead on this if that's all right with the council. As Mr. Kelson noted, Chris Wheeler and Mr. Kelson are here if there are any questions, but this is a pretty straightforward ordinance. As Clerk Bolden noted, this ordinance would correct two mistakes that were recently spotted in Ordinance 2109. In our code, there is a table of monthly and annual rates and charges entitled Private Fire Connections Per Connection. That table of rates and charges was recently amended by Ordinance 2109. And after Ordinance 2109 was passed by the council and signed by the mayor, we spotted two mistakes in that table. So this ordinance simply corrects those two mistakes. The first correction has to do with the table header, which should have read annually, and I believe that word was simply cut off. The second correction makes an amendment to the annual rate listed for the 4-inch or smaller fire line. The rate that was listed in Ordinance 2109 was $142.32, when it should have read $141.96, which is the monthly charge, which was correct in the ordinance, of $11.83 multiplied by 12 months. So this does not make any substantive changes, but because these mistakes were spotted before the ordinance went to the IURC, I believe the Utilities Department and the Legal Department thought it would be a prudent step to go ahead and get those corrections made so that there was no confusion at the IURC. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and as noted, Mr. Kelson and Mr. Wheeler are also available. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lucas, for presenting that correcting ordinance. We'll go to my council colleagues. Do we have any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, we'll go to the public for any comments on ordinance 21-27. Seeing none, we'll go back to our council colleague for any final comments. Okay, seeing no further comments, are we ready for the question? Will the clerk please call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Volin.
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Scambaluri.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
And Rallo.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that passes 9-0, which meets the 2/3 vote threshold required for passage. So thank you, Mr. Kelson. Thank you, Mr. Lucas, and thank you for your presence, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I do believe we have more legislation for second reading. Councilmember Flaherty.
Mr. President, I move ordinance 2111 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved in second. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, Councilmember
I'm
Rose.
sorry, let me re-speak that. Will the clerk please call the roll? Thank you.
Of course. Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo. I'm sorry that I missed you on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Volin,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. That passes 9-0. It has been moved and seconded that ordinance 2111 be introduced and read by clerk and title and by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2111 to amend Title II of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Administration and Personnel regarding updating and harmonizing portions of Title II of the Municipal Code. The synopsis is as follows. Ordinance 2111 makes several changes to Title II of the Bloomington Municipal Code to bring the title into line with changed statutes, to clarify references, and to harmonize current practices and the city code. Your committee of the whole recommendation is due pass 800.
Thank you. And I do see Mr. Rooker here to present this evening. How are you, sir?
Mr. President.
Well.
Pardon?
Mr. President.
I'm sorry. I'm
It's
looking
okay.
around the screen. I see you, Councilmember Flaherty. Yes.
To move that ordinance 2111 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. Been properly moved in second. Now, Mr. Rooker, would you care to present?
Yes, thank you, Council Member Sims. My name is Michael Rooker. I'm the city attorney for the city of Bloomington. I'm here tonight to present ordinance 21-11. Ordinance 2111 is one of those periodic cleanup ordinances that comes before the city council. It makes a number of changes to Title II of the municipal code to bring Title II into line with the latest statutes, updates due to court decisions, alterations to the city's contractual obligations, and changes in city practices. So Ordinance 21-11 is a classic piece of maintenance legislation. I will briefly summarize some of the changes that are contained in Ordinance 21-11. First, in a number of places, Ordinance 2111 updates Title II to reflect changes in the structure of the city of Bloomington and its departments. Primarily, the Engineering Services Division of the Planning and Transportation Department has been replaced by an independent engineering department, and references are now to the Engineering Department as opposed to the Engineering Services Division of the Planning and Transportation Department. Similarly, references to the city's Transportation and Traffic Engineer are now updated to the Director of Engineering, as that is the new title of that position. Second, Ordinance 21-11 proposes a number of changes to the enabling ordinances related to city boards and commissions. For example, the requirement that 2 members of the Plan Commission be appointed from within the areas intended for annexation is removed in Ordinance 21-11, as the areas intended for annexation no longer exist. And also the section establishing the Bloomington Telecommunications Council is proposed to be deleted, as the Telecommunications Council has not met since 2013. And unfortunately, the state legislature has stripped such councils of essentially all of their authority. Similarly, the political affiliation requirement for members of the city's utility service board is proposed to be removed from the city code, as the state statute that used to require political affiliation for board members of utility service board was changed in 2019. So we're bringing the local code requirement into line with the state code. Third, Ordinance 21-11 up a number of Housing and Neighborhood Development Department, or HAND department provisions, and also cleans up the section on the Board of Housing Quality Appeals, which is part of that Housing and Neighborhood Development section. In several places, Chapter 2.19 of the Bloomington Municipal Code, which deals with the Housing and Neighborhood Development Division, references positions that no longer exist and are no longer staffed. So we correct those references with Ordinance 21-11. And also Ordinance 2111 cleans up Section 2.19040 in a pretty substantial way regarding the Board of Housing Quality Appeals. Several other miscellaneous changes are included in Ordinance 21-11. The ordinance authorizes the appointment of alternate members to the city's parking commission and also simplifies section 2.22030. That's a section that contained in detail the full benefit leave policy for city employees. Of course, it's very difficult to keep that current with the city negotiating collective bargaining agreements nearly every year and frequently updating its personnel manual. So now section 2.22030 through this ordinance would simply reference the relevant collective bargaining agreement or the personnel manual for purposes of determining rules for employee benefit leave. Furthermore, Ordinance 2111 eliminates the reference to firemen in Title II of the Municipal Code and replaces that with the non-gendered word firefighter. We have been trying to eliminate gender references in all of our documents. The ordinance also updates the rank structure of the fire department to eliminate the reference to the merited rank of sergeant, which has now been replaced with the new merited rank of chauffeur, or retitled, so to speak. Ordinance 21-11 also removes a redundant reporting requirement in section 2.28080, which is Bloomington's living wage ordinance. The annual report referenced by that section has never been prepared or requested, and the information that would be placed in that annual report is now publicly available on the city's website through the city's contracts portal. And then finally, Ordinance 21-11 eliminates Chapter 2.52, which contains some provisions related to the disposition of property by the city. That section has been preempted by state code provisions, and so it is redundant and unnecessary. I am happy to, I do believe there is one amendment proposed, and I'm happy to address any questions that council members may have regarding Ordinance 21-11.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Flaherty, do we have an amendment? I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Is Councilmember Smith?
There's an amendment that I sponsored by request from Mr. Lucas and Mr. Rooker. And Mr. Rooker, would you like to just tell us what the amendment is? And
yes, of course. Thank you, Councilmember Smith, for being so gracious as to sponsor the amendment. As I was looking over and preparing for the meeting, though we did eliminate the reference to the Plan Commission members being appointed from within the areas intended for annexation, unfortunately, just due to an oversight on my part, I neglected to correct the total number of Plan Commissioners, which is referenced in the sentence just above that as being 12 members down to 10 members with those areas gone. The Plan Commission has been meeting with just 10 members well, as long as I can remember, frankly, as long as I've been staffing them. There are the nine members that are voting members who are appointed due to various processes within the city. And then there's a 10th non-voting member who is a crossover member from the county's Plan Commission. And in that case, that's Tron from the county. So,
thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Councilmember Rowland.
The amendment wasn't properly introduced.
I was about to say that. Thanks. Mr.
Thank
Smith.
Yes,
do I need to introduce that? I would like to then nominate that we.
No, you move amendment 14.
I would like to move the amendment to be approved to change the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second. And thank you for your explanation. Do we have any questions of the sponsor from council members? Seeing none, do we have public comment on just amendment 1 for ordinance 21-11? Okay, seeing none, we'll go back to council for final comments. Amendment 1, ordinance 21-11. Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll for amendment 1 for ordinance 21-11?
Yes. Sorry, one second. I'm trying to get that typed in. Okay. Councilmember Scambalori,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. An amendment was adopted 9-0. We now return to council for any questions on ordinance 21-11 as amended. Okay, seeing none, we go to the public for comments. Ordinance 21-11 as amended. Seeing none, we return back to council for any final comments. Ordinance 21-11 as amended. Okay, seeing none, are we ready? I'm sorry, Councilmember Piedmont. Oh, thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to say for the benefit of the public that we did discuss this ordinance 2 weeks ago and had several questions that were answered at that time. So if it seems like we're rushing through it, it's because we had already discussed it previously.
Thank you. Any further comments from council? Seeing none, are we ready for the question? Would a clerk please call the roll on ordinance 21-11 as amended?
Yes. Councilmember, Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
and Scambalori.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. Ordinance 21-11 as amended is adopted 9-0. Thank you, Mr. Rooker, and thank you, Councilmember Smith. I do believe we still have more legislation ready for second reading. Councilmember Flaherty. Yes, Councilmember Flaherty.
I move ordinance 21-12 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved in second. Will the clerk please call the roll, please?
Councilmember Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Thank you. Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
and Sims.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that motion passes 9-0. It has been moved and seconded that ordinance 21-12 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please read?
Yes, ordinance 21-12 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic regarding restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance amends Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code. The changes include adding several new signalized intersections to and correcting a number of existing signalized intersections on the table of locations with restricted turns on red. Your committee of the whole recommendation is to pass 8-0-0.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
Mr. President, I move that ordinance 21-12 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second. Or is Councilmember Rosenberger presenting this evening?
Yes, I just have a quick presentation. I'll share my screen. Okay. Okay, it's loading. So this is an ordinance to add restricted turns on red at signalized intersections. So where would these restrictions be? They are mostly in the dense areas of our downtown and campus. So the downtown overlay signalized intersections and the campus signalized intersections. Why is this being brought? Because there's a higher risk to pedestrians and people biking if right turns on red are allowed, and this is it goes with our comprehensive plan. So this is just a comprehensive plan slide. The major goal is 6.3 in transportation, and that is to improve the bicycle and pedestrian network, maintain, improve, and expand an accessible, safe, and efficient network for pedestrians, and attain platinum status as a bicycle-friendly city. The policies then that this goes with is 6.1.2, that we want to, when we're looking at transportation needs, we want to balance economic, environmental, accessibility, and equity needs. 6.1.5, we want to encourage streets to be used as public spaces. 6.1.7, we want to prioritize safety and accessibility. 6.3.1, we want to prioritize bike and pedestrian infrastructure. 6.3.3, we want to improve physical conditions that support walking and biking. 6.3.4, we want to, I guess, require pedestrian-friendly design features. Sorry about that dog in the background. I'm watching a dog right now. 6.4.1, we want to consider all ages, abilities, and modes. And 6.4.2, we want to focus on multimodal improvement. Okay, so this is just a rendering of right turn on red and why it is dangerous to people walking and biking. You can see this blue square that is like a car wanting to turn right on red. These little yellow dots are pedestrians, and there is a person biking here right in front of the car. So if you're turning right on red, what you do is you look to the right. So that is this orange arrow, and because you're looking for oncoming traffic, which is the threat to your safety. So you look there, but you're really turning the other direction. So as you're looking the wrong way, really, I guess it's part of the right way, you're not necessarily paying attention, to the people in front of you. So there's a potential that you might just hit someone on a bike or somebody walking. So what was brought up at Committee of the Whole was a request for any kind of education and awareness, and the administration has said what they will do is put what is called a variable message board that's mobile out in different locations to make people aware of this change. I think someone had asked about sandwich boards, but drivers really don't read sandwich boards when they're driving. So that wasn't recommended by staff. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Parliamentary, no, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I skipped over a little bit. There are 3 co-sponsors of this. It is myself, Councilmember Smith, and Councilmember Boland.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty, do we move forward on this before we introduce the amendment, or is this time for the amendment?
That's really up to the person bringing the amendment, but I would also say it's an appropriate time to invite any staff input, perhaps prior to that. if there is any.
Staff input. Well, first of all, I'd like to offer colleague Smith and colleague Boland if they had anything to add to this presentation.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any staff input? I see Mr. Copper is on the screen.
Good evening, Neil Copper, Senior Project Engineer in the Engineering Department. I didn't have anything that I wanted to input, but I'd be happy to answer questions if I can help.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Well, I would say I'm happy to, if we want to, I could move Amendment 1. Just, does that make sense?
Just need a second.
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 Thank you. Been properly moved in second. Councilmember Rosenbarger, will you please present?
Okay, yes. So Amendment 1 is very short. It is just removing the 6th and Walnut Street from east to north from the list of affected intersections, because that is not a place where you could turn right on red if you wanted to, because it's one-way street. That's it.
Hey, thank you. Do we have any questions for Councilor Rosenbarger from council? Okay, seeing none, do we have any comments from the public on Amendment 1 for Ordinance 21-12? If there are any, we invite you to use the raise hand function on Zoom or to send us, our host, a note on chat indicating that you'd like to speak. Okay, seeing none, going back to the council on final comment on Amendment 1, Ordinance 21-12. Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on Amendment 1 for Ordinance 21-12?
Sorry about that. Let me try that again. Piedmont, Council Member Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Volan?
Yes.
Rosenbarger?
Yes.
Scambaluri?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that amendment, as moved, passes 9-0. So we'll now return to council for a vote on Ordinance 21-12 as amended. We'll go to council for any questions on Ordinance 21-12 as amended. Say, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I had a constituent reach out to me with a concern that she felt it was less safe actually for a pedestrian to cross when there's no turn allowed on red. And I wonder if the sponsors could just maybe provide a little more data to support their claims of a safer. I mean, I understood the presentation and it does make sense to me, but is there some data you could cite to support no turn on red for improved safety?
Mr. President.
Councilmember, yes. Councilmember Rosenberg. Go ahead, Councilmember Bowman.
No. I'll defer to Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Thank you. Or you're a co-sponsor. I'm sorry.
I don't mind, Councilmember Boland, if you want to go first. I was pulling up my presentation from BikePad because it had a little data in there, and then I also can explain.
While she's doing that, I would
While she's doing that, we'll go with Councilmember Boland. Thank you.
Yeah. While she's doing that, I'd simply start by asking, does the member of the public have any data to support their assumption that it's less safe? They feel it's less safe, but I'm pretty confident the data says the other way. The second point is that inherently a car is less safe than a pedestrian. You know, it has the ability to kill people at speeds above 20 miles an hour, and you have to be licensed to be a car driver, unlike a pedestrian. So I think the onus is on the car driver to be more careful in the roadway in order to have the privilege of going above speeds that a pedestrian can withstand. So I mean, I think the data will, you know, demonstrate it. I don't have it handy, but I sort of reject the premise. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, did you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenberger.
Thank you. Okay, first I will say I think those renderings hopefully are useful to that resident to see that most people aren't looking, a driver doesn't tend to be looking at crosswalks when they're turning right on red. Another thing is that if you're allowed to turn right on red, then that a pedestrian potentially does not have one lane of traffic that is actually safe to cross, where a car might not be moving through the crosswalk at that time. Sorry about the dog. So like if you're trying to, it's hard to, I guess, picture it, but if you're trying to cross the street, when you have an arrow, that means like somebody with a green light can turn right into you, and that means somebody can be turning right on red also into you. So by saying no right turn on red, it at least gives a pedestrian one lane, one direction of traffic that no one can be moving, if that makes sense. Then just some data. So there aren't a lot of recent studies on this, and this was, I think, touched on in the memo from the engineering department. There was a 1995 study that found the number of right on red fatalities was relatively small, about 84 a year, but that 44% of the victims were pedestrians and another 10% were bicyclists. And that permitting rights on red increases the number of pedestrians hit by people driving cars by 60% and increases the number of bicyclists hit and killed by people driving cars by 100%. So those are like very big percentages because like the numbers are so low, but yeah, they basically double for cyclists. So another data point I had also, I mean, it's relatively old data, but right on red crashes in Indiana, Maryland, and Missouri between 1989 and 1992 occurred at 100 times the rate of fatalities. So just saying, like, you know, there are a lot more injuries and fatalities at that. So that's the data that we have on it. I don't know if Mr. Copper would like to speak to it.
I can add just a little, if that's all right. Staff did look at, there's basically a national clearinghouse of crash modification factors that indicates what you would expect to happen to crashes under different changes. There were 18 different studies cited, and every single one of those 18 indicated that you expect crashes to increase if you allow right turns on red or turns on red. The majority of those studies focused on pedestrian safety and showed the biggest changes, but some of them were just overall all crashes. So again, all 18 showed that you would expect crashes to increase if you allow turns on red.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Pete Musson. Any further questions from council? Okay, I do. For this may be for Mr. Copper or any of the sponsors. You just cited data for Indiana, Maryland, and there was another state that I missed. The 3 states. What were those 3 that you cited, Mr. Copper?
It was me, Missouri.
I'm sorry. Indiana, okay. Maryland, and Missouri. Was there different percentages for each state, or was that a combination of all states? I think you said all crash would raise 100%. So does it differ from state to state of the 3 that were surveyed?
No, it was just saying with those 3 states, it was just a very small, I think, data point in an article I read, but just for those 3 states, that injuries occurred 100 times the rate of fatalities. So it's just, I think, distinguishing between fatalities and injuries.
Okay, so those other states will be consistent from your position with Indiana.
Maryland and Missouri?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just saying they all had a rate of 100%.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, and I think you reported this 2 weeks ago when I asked what was the response you got when you followed up with BPD with regard to this ordinance.
Yes, they found it very straightforward and had no issues with it.
Thank you. And lastly, and we talked about this again, but I'd like a reminder if at all, what was the estimated fiscal impact statement? Fiscal impact on this ordinance with regard to extra signage, maybe some educational programming, that sort of thing. What was your estimated fiscal impact?
That is about $75 to $100 per sign. It costs roughly $50 per sign to make it, $50 to install it. Installation is about 1 hour of time for 2 city employees working at $25 an hour. We need about 75 to 100 signs, so that would be about $7,500. Well, 75 to 90 signs, so $7,500 to $9,000 for the fiscal impact.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wanted to inquire whether at intersections where there's a high number of pedestrians and also a high number of vehicles, is there a possibility for the city putting in a phase in the lights to allow pedestrian only crossings? I think the only place I can think of where we have something like that is maybe at Henderson and Atwater. Is that something that could be looked into to avoid the situation where you have people turning when the light is also green for pedestrians to walk into that same lane?
Yep, that's called a leading pedestrian interval. I think Mr. Copper can speak more to this. We have some capability of that at intersections, but not that much, I think. Like we don't have the technology at all of them, but it is something that I would also like us to do.
If I could add, there's Councilmember Piedmont Smith may have also been asking about an exclusive pedestrian interval where the pedestrian phase is entirely exclusive of the motor vehicle phase and doesn't even go with an adjacent green light. I'm not sure if that was your question, but it is feasible. It can be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. I think at the intersection of 10th and Fee, we have that where the pedestrians get their own phase. In most scenarios, it actually introduces more delay for the pedestrians, and so you get a higher incidence of pedestrians crossing outside of their phase, but definitely we can look at it case by case.
Okay, something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further council questions? Thank you. Seeing none, we will go to the public for comments. We will ask that you please use the raise hand function in Zoom, or you can send the host a note through chat and we will recognize you. And I will also remind the public if there's more than one person on the same computer or phone, please let us know. We can ensure that as best we can that the public can speak as they would like. Mr. Lucas.
I see one hand raised at the moment, Mr. Greg Alexander, who should now be able to unmute.
Hello again, Mr. Alexander. You have about 5 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Greg Alexander. This is a great ordinance. right turn on red is one of the most destructive behaviors for pedestrian transportation. Drivers waiting to make a right turn on red will block the crosswalk during the pedestrian walk phase. In addition, while making the turn, they will be looking left. They will always be looking left. They will not look right. A driver completing a right turn on red killed a student right downtown last February. It's worth noting the vast majority of pedestrians hit at right turn on red do not die. I've been hit by drivers turning right on red twice. I've witnessed other cyclists be hit by drivers turning right on red. The problem is much larger than what's reported, and it's much larger than just downtown. I've experienced many, many more close calls where the driver only stopped because I screamed. By contrast, for example, at a right turn on green, a driver is much more likely to be looking ahead. They don't have to look left because the traffic coming from their left has a red light. So they aren't focused on left. They look ahead and they can see the pedestrians. I just want to caution that this ordinance will be insufficient on its own. Enforcement is going to be a big challenge. At existing no turn on red intersections, I witnessed Bloomington Police Department officers routinely ignoring the existing law while driving around without their emergency lights or sirens. In addition, I've seen them demonstrate a marked disregard for the enforcement of pedestrian safety laws. In fact, the way they profile people of interest often results in them harassing pedestrians who are following the law while ignoring the law-breaking drivers who threaten them. And further, there are significant challenges in the engineering of many intersections when it comes to pedestrian safety. Right on red is not the only problem that we face. This is a good step, but there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Lucas.
Next up is Paul Ash.
Good evening, Mr. Ash. You have about 5 minutes.
While I have been removed from the Bicycle Pedestrian Safety Commission, while I was still on, we addressed this issue and we did not take it lightly. People have been killed. Anything that we can do to prevent further carnage should be taken seriously. People just need to slow down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. Do we have any other takers, Mr. Lucas?
I do have one comment that was sent via chat. The comment is from Sam Dove. Sam says that there are cracks on the sidewalks along Atwater. And that is the comment. And I don't see any additional hands raised at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we'll go back to council for final comment on ordinance 21-12 as amended. Do we have any final comments from council? Okay, Councilmember Smith.
I just wanted to publicly acknowledge all the hard work that Councilmember Rosenbarger did on this. She really did all the hard, heavy lifting, and I appreciate it very much. It's a good ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Was your hand up, Councilmember Boland? Yes.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilmember Smith's sentiments. Councilmember Rosenbarger's done heroic work as far as I'm concerned on this. And while the warnings that Councilmember Alexander gave us or not Mr. Alexander gave us in the public are worth heeding. He's also right that this is a good first step and overdue. And frankly, it shouldn't have taken the deaths of pedestrians for us to act in this way. We should try to be more proactive in making more improvements to the safety of pedestrians, not just downtown, but all over town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further final comments from council? Seeing none, are we ready for the question on ordinance 21-12 as amended? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo. I'm sorry, I didn't get your response.
Yes.
No, I
Yes.
meant actually Councilmember Rallos.
Yes.
Thank you. Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ordinance 21-12 as amended was adopted 9-0. Thank you, Councilmember Rosenbaum and your co-sponsors. Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that ordinance 2113 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo.
Yeah.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. That was adopted or passed 9-0. It's been moved in second that ordinance 21-13 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2113 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic regarding amending chapters 1232-080 Schedule M, no parking zones, to remove 3 no parking zones and add 10 no parking zones, and to amend Chapter 1532-100 Schedule O loading zones to add 2 loading zones. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance amends Title 15 Vehicles and Traffic of the Bloomington Municipal Code and comes forth at the request of city staff and Parking and Traffic Commissions. The ordinance makes the following changes. It deletes 3 no parking zones on 6th Street. It adds 10 no parking zones in the Renwick area. It adds 2 loading zones. The Committee of the Whole recommendation is do pass 8-0-0.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
I move that ordinance 2113 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second. I do believe we have Mr. Farshi to present this evening.
Yes.
All
Hello.
right, you're unmuted and prepared. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Amir Farshi, Long Range Planner for the Planning and Transportation Department. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. The ordinance proposes various amendments to the Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic. Title 15 is the title of the code subject to frequent change and revisions. These proposals are the result of feedback from the Planning and Transportation, Engineering, Parking Services Division of Public Works, and legal departments. The purpose of these recommendations is to address issues that have come to staff's attention through public requests, commission's recommendations, or 180-day orders. Some items are related to safety issues, improving visibility for people, safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, traffic calming, and housekeeping changes. This request for changes to Title 15 was presented to the Traffic Commission and Parking Commission in February 2021 and to the Council Committee of the Whole on March 24th, 2021. The ordinance makes the following changes to Title 15. The ordinance deletes 3 no parking zones on West 6th Street between Pine Street and Elm Street. The ordinance adds no parking zones in the Renwick area. These no parking zones are already in the Renwick area. The staff reviewed them and wants to codify them. And the ordinance adds 2 loading zones near 1022 North College Avenue and near 416 South Washington Street. The details and maps are included in the meeting packet. Please let the staff know if you have any questions, and let me introduce the staff for in this Zoom meeting. Neil Copper, Senior Project Engineer, and Beth Rosenbarger, Planning Services Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farchi. I do believe we have an amendment. Councilmember Rosenbarger. Councilmember Rosenbarger. You're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's wild at my house right now. President Sims, I move Amendment 1.
Second. Okay, thank you. It's been moved in second. Would you care to share with us, Councilmember Rosenbarger?
Yep, this is just an error that is getting corrected. So it references a title in a section of the code that was wrong, and now this makes it right.
Thank you. Do we have any questions to Amendment 1 or for Amendment 1, Ordinance 21-13 for this amendment sponsor from Council? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public for any comments only on Amendment 1 for Ordinance 21-13. Please use the raise hand function in Zoom or send the host a message in chat so you could be recognized. Do we have any takers, Mr. Lucas?
Not on Amendment 1, no.
Thank you. Moving back to council final comment on Amendment 1, Ordinance 21-13. Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll for Amendment 1 on Ordinance 21-13?
Councilmember Rallo,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Sandberg.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Amendment 1 for Ordinance 21-13 is adopted 9-0. We will now go to council for any questions for Ordinance 21-13 as amended. And we do have staff present. So do we have any questions from council? Seeing none, we'll move to the public for public comment on Ordinance 21-13 as amended. We will again remind you to use the raise hand function in Zoom or send the host a message in chat to indicate you'd like to speak.
I do have a request from Steve Schatz to comment. And I believe Mr. Schatz is also sharing a picture with me for me to display. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Mr. Schatz. And if he would like to start his comment, I'm going to see if I've received the exhibit that he sent in to me.
Thank you. My name's Steve Schatz. I own a house at 6th and Elm, and I'd like to state my opposition to the changing of the no parking on 6th Street. The picture I have is what it would look like if both sides of the street were allowed to be parked. At this point, 6th Street is really too narrow for 2 cars to go by. What we do is when you see a car coming, you pull over to the side and you let 1 car by, and it works pretty well. But if the entire 6th Street is parked on both sides, that means we're going to have to either back up to the next intersection or pull into an alley. It's going to be very difficult. So I don't think it's well thought out. I don't think that it'll be very workable, and I think we'll see more accidents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schatz. Were we going to try to show something, Mr. Lucas?
I've been refreshing my email and I don't think that picture's come through. I'm happy to pass that along as soon as I do receive that.
Can I share my screen?
Members of the public don't have that setting enabled. So I will keep refreshing and chime back in as soon as I get that through my inbox.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else for public comment, Mr. Lucas?
I'm not sure. I just received a chat from Chris Cockerham. I'm not sure if he would like to comment. Go ahead and unmute, assuming he might want to.
No, I'm not speaking on this one. I just had a question for you for a future comment.
Oh, okay. Then I don't see any additional requests for comment on this item.
Thank you. You keep trying to refresh, and we will now go back to council members for final comments on ordinance 21-13 as amended. Okay, seeing none. Councilmember Smith.
May I ask Mr. Farsi to comment on the Mr. Schatz discussion about the 6th Street and the narrowness of the street?
Sure. In this street, we do not expect that there is going to be any increase in on-street parking. And if so, it will be likely be a small increase, and there are plenty of spaces for on-street parking in this street. And during the staff presentation and evaluation in Parking Commission, we did some analysis and measuring the street and receiving feedback from sanitation department. And based on the street widths, in this section of the street can support parking on both sides, and people, in most cases, people are doing the self-regulation in order to avoid parking across from each other.
And if I can follow up with one more question, is if indeed it becomes problematic, what would somebody who lives on that street, what would they need to contact you, Mr. Farsi, and just point that out and ask for further modification of that in the future?
Sure, they can contact the Parking Services Division of Public Works and also the Planning and Transportation Departments. There are different points of contacts that they can let us know if there is going to be any problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lucas, did you?
Yes, I received the picture from a member of the public, and if you'd like me to display that now, I believe I can.
Yes, we can look at that briefly, I think.
So I believe this is the stretch of 6th Street that the member of the public was referencing.
Okay, thank you. We're still on final comments. Does any council members have any comments? Any based on the picture we just seen or any other information? Okay, thank you. Then we're ready for the Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, I did want to respond to the picture and the parking on West 6th Street.
Yes, please.
I don't think it's problematic to, as long as it's not fully parked on both sides of the street, you know, all day long. I don't see this as a problem. A lot of streets in Germany, where my parents are from, are purposely narrow so that you do have to pull over to the side to let somebody else pass, and that makes for a very calm street and a very friendly street for, you know, kids playing and things like that. So if that's what needs to happen here with cars parked on either side, then I don't see that as a problem. Of course, if it turns out that cars are parked bumper to bumper on both sides, then we can readdress the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Do you have any more comments from council? Okay, seeing none, are we ready for the question? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 21-13 as amended?
Yes, Councilmember Volin,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambluri,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
and Rallo.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Ordinance 21-13 as amended is adopted 9-0. Thank you very much. I believe we still have more legislation ready for second reading tonight. Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that ordinance 2107 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that ordinance 21-07, thank you, be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only. Will the clerk please either read or, will the clerk please read, I'm sorry, call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember
Thank you.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Scambluri,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
and Volin. Did I lose Volin? Okay.
Okay, he's not back, so that's been moved and seconded, and it has passed 8-0. Will the clerk please read?
Yes. Ordinance 2107 to amend the City of Bloomington zoning maps by amending the district ordinance and preliminary plan for Parcel E of the Thompson PUD regarding 300 West Hillside Drive. Tom Brennan, petitioner. This synopsis is as follows. Ordinance 2107 would amend the district ordinance and preliminary plan for Parcel E of the Thompson PUD to allow for the construction of 19 townhomes and 104 multifamily residences. Let's see, the Land Use Committee recommendation with reasonable conditions was due pass 103. Reasonable condition 1 received a due pass recommendation of 400. Reasonable condition 3 received a due pass recommendation of 400, and reasonable condition 4 was withdrawn.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking up. Councilmember Flaherty, yes.
Yes, I move ordinance 2107 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved in second. And we have presenting this evening. I'm sorry, I don't see.
I believe it's Mr. Eric Grulick from the planning department.
Yes, I'm here
Okay.
if you're ready.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see his face normally, but he normally
all right.
never does.
I'm
No, no,
invisible.
no, no, you're not quite, but I hear your voice fine. So will you please present?
Yes, hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yes.
Great. I'll take that as a yes. So this is a request for Tom Brennan for a property that he owns at 300 West Hillside Drive. This property is part of the Thompson Planned Unit Development. It's located on Parcel E. The petitioner is requesting to amend the preliminary plan and district ordinance for Parcel E within the Thompson PUD to allow for this site to be redeveloped, to allow for 19 townhomes and 104 multifamily residences. The site has been developed with a warehouse on most of it. There's a large warehouse that is built north of Hillside Drive. The petitioner owns 2/3 of that warehouse. The petitioner also owns another piece of property that is just south of Hillside Drive that currently has a surface parking lot on it. Both of those are the properties that would be involved with this petition. So the petitioner is proposing to remove his 2/3 of that warehouse and redevelop that portion of the property with a series of buildings. These would be multifamily as well as mixed use. And then for the property south of Hillside Drive, that would be developed with a new building with multifamily units as well as 2 floors of parking. So the petitioner has been working through several different versions of a site plan that are predominantly the same. The differences that have kind of transpired as this has gone through the Plan Commission, as well as some of the Land Use Committee meetings with the council, is in relation to the parking that is shown on the west side of the site. So in general, along the east side of the site, this is the portion of the property that fronts on the Switchyard Park. The petitioner is proposing to construct 6 buildings. The four northern buildings would be townhome buildings. These would be 3 stories in height and would have a mixture of bedrooms in there, 3 and 4 bedrooms each. Those would be in total of 19 units in those 4 buildings. Moving south of that would be a building that's 5 stories in height. This would have a ground floor commercial component, some ground floor parking, and then 4 stories of residential units above that. And then moving south would be a 4-story building, again with some mixed commercial use along the Switchyard Park frontage, some ground floor parking, and then 3 floors of apartments above that. So all of these site plans have parking that is located behind the buildings with a parking area that connects to Hillside Drive. Hillside Drive is the only public right-of-way that connects or extends or stubs into this property. All of the properties on the west side of this site have been developed as single-family residences. So there are no alleys, no street stubs or vacant right-of-way to connect to. So at the time being, the Hillside Drive connection is the only way in and out of this particular portion of the site. The petitioner has shown a roundabout within that parking area in order to facilitate fire truck turnaround. Fire trucks are limited in terms of the depth that they can go into a site without having a turnaround. So there is a turnaround or a roundabout that's been provided to accommodate fire truck movement through the site. So the petitioner is showing a parking lot along the west side of the buildings. As I've mentioned, this overall layout of the parking and the roundabout has kind of gone through a few renditions. And I'll just kind of briefly show you those 3. They're very similar in nature. So what you see on the screen now is kind of the version that was shown to the Plan Commission and what initially was shown to the City Council at the first Land Use Committee meeting. The petitioner in between the first and second Land Use Committee meeting looked at a possible alternative that moved the roundabout further north on the site. This gave a little bit more parking area to the south of the site, but overall the site layout in terms of buildings and parking pretty much stayed the same. Since the last land use committee last Wednesday, the petitioner has also investigated a third site plan that shows angled parking spaces behind the west side of those buildings. The benefit of the angled parking is that it does add a little bit more, about 2 feet or so, more to the buffer yard that's being proposed along the west side of the site. So in all of these different versions of the plan, there would be a minimum 14-foot wide buffer that is shown along the entire west side of the property. This would be landscaped and would provide a setback and buffer between the site and the residences to the west. So the 14-foot buffer in combination with the parking and drive aisles, which are approximately 60 feet wide, those add up to a 74-foot separation between the parking and the buffer yard and the adjacent residences to the west. That would be in addition to the setback for those buildings from the parking area, which adds another good 10 feet. So you've got almost 85 feet or so of separation between these buildings and the property line for the single family residences to the west. So that certainly helps to mitigate a lot of noise and other disturbance, as well as help mitigate some of the additional height that is being requested for these buildings. So the site plan that is being proposed for the property that is south of Hillside Drive, as I mentioned, this was a building that had 2 floors of parking with residences above it. During the course of the Plan Commission and the Land Use Committee meetings, that building has changed size and shape a little bit. That's now being proposed to be a 4-story building. So that would have 2 floors of parking as well as 2 floors of residences above it. So this would be accessed solely from Hillside Drive. And so that would have a drive cut on the north side of that property to access Hillside Drive. So the petitioner has submitted a rendering kind of showing how these buildings would look in terms of height and massing from some of the residences to the west. As I mentioned, there's a significant distance of at least 85 feet on the site itself from the property line to the buildings. Most of the residences on the west side also have a considerable setback from their property lines to where those residences are. So the petitioner has identified almost 100 to 150 feet from those residential buildings to the proposed buildings, and has kind of shown how that sight line would look in relation to the buildings and what an adjacent neighbor could see. So the 150 feet there provides a great deal of distance between these buildings and the residences to the west. So I'm just going to kind of step through some renderings showing the overall site in context with some of the surrounding buildings. So shown here, this is the site that we are discussing in red. You can see the switchyard property to the east of this, the various buildings, the switchyard trail, and kind of how this building lines up. The site plan for this property has been laid out so that it stubs to the north property line, with the hopes that if the warehouse component to the north of this redevelops at some time in the future, that this drive will be extended and can stub to Grimes Lane or Patterson Drive, and provide a through connection to Patterson Drive. So this is a view showing the overall site. You can see the townhomes on the right side, some of the improvements with the Switchyard Park that are in the center of the screen. So one of the things that's been very important with this petition has been the look of these buildings and how they interact with the Switchyard Park and the Beeline Trail that is right along the east property line. We wanted to make sure that there was a pedestrian connection for each building. We wanted to make sure that the architecture was of the highest quality, that we had a good deal of modulation, mix of building materials, balconies in order to get people on the fronts to look out over the trail, both for security purposes, but also just to provide better living environment for folks to have outdoor living space. So you can see on this screen here, you've got the townhomes on the right side of the site. You've got a 5-story building kind of in the center, stepping down to the 4-story building. And then on the left side would be another 4-story building as well. So this is a rendering kind of looking northwest on the site. So Hillside Drive kind of cuts through the middle of the site here. On the left side, you can see that building. This is a 5-story building that's shown in this rendering. However, as I mentioned, they have reduced the height of this to a 4-story building. So looking north here, you can see the kind of carved out center or carved out corner of the mixed use building that's right on Hillside and the Beeline Trail. The petitioners have shown kind of an open plaza area to help this interact with the Beeline Trail. And then kind of moving north, you can see the next mixed use building. Again, recessed entry, a direct connection to that building in the Beeline Trail, as well as another pedestrian connection between those two buildings. And then moving north, you can see the townhome buildings. And so the petitioner is showing a pedestrian connection between those two buildings to connect the townhome buildings to the multi-use trail along the Beeline. So again, one of the things the petitioners incorporated are patios along those fronts, both on the upper stores and along the ground floors to get people outside to interact, promote security on the trail, and provide a good living experience for the folks that are living here. So one of the other concerns has certainly been how these buildings will look on the west side of them, how they're seen from the residences to the west. So this is a rendering of building 1. This is the southernmost building. So this is showing how the west side of that building would carry around the architectural elements, the mix of materials and colors, and again, the balconies. So this goes along with the 360-degree architecture that the UDO requires for buildings. So this just kind of shows a overall compatibility on all 4 sides of the buildings. Again, this is another rendering of the west side. So you can see one of the townhome buildings on the left side of the screen, and then that 5-story mixed-use building just to the right of that. So you can see the roundabouts kind of on the bottom side of the screen and the parking just offset of that. So these are, again, just kind of the same rendering showing the buildings as they look from the Beeline Trail. Again, a mix of materials and balconies, just to kind of show how these look along the Switchyard and the Beeline Trail. These are the townhome buildings. So you can see the kind of raised patios and balconies that are provided along the front of these. So with that, there are several very important elements to this overall petition that I want to take the time to point out. The townhome buildings would be constructed to a LEED standard for residential buildings. The other 3 buildings, the 2 mixed-use buildings, and then the building south of Hillside Drive, would all be required to be LEED Silver certified. So this is a very significant commitment on the petitioner's part. This is above and beyond a lot of petitions where we see something that just says it will be designed to a LEED Silver certification, but not actually be certified. These will actually be certified. So there's a very small list of buildings within Bloomington that are actually LEED certified. So that's certainly a significant undertaking. In addition, the petitioner is required to meet the affordable housing guidelines within the UDO. So a minimum of 15% of the units within these buildings will be set aside for folks that are between 70 and 110% of the area median income. So that is a reduction. That's a 10% reduction that is required by the UDO for PUD amendments, that they have to have a 10% lower threshold for the affordability guidelines. So the petitioners would be meeting that standard. So one of the other elements here with this is the petitioner would be installing a sidewalk along the north side of Hillside Drive to connect this site to Rogers Street. So that again is a significant off-site improvement that would help connect this property to Rogers Street. Certainly pedestrian connectivity is very important on this site, not just to the Beeline Trail, but also to surrounding neighborhoods and improving that. So they would be required to install a tree plot and sidewalk along the entire north side of Hillside Drive from this site to Rogers Street. So that is another benefit and bonus with this project as well. So with that, the Planning Commission did vote 7-1 to forward this to the Common Council with a positive recommendation and the 5 conditions that are listed in the council memo. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.